Hello, Tar Heel Nation. Welcome back to another episode of UNC Hoops Talk. I am your host, Dan DeWitt, and I got another diehard Tar Heel fan with me this week, Anthony Pagnotta. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Anthony Pagnotta, huge Tar Heel fan. He kills it on Twitter. Follow him. It's at Future Tar Heel. He goes at people. He goes after, gets to events. It had a show. I don't know if you're still doing that on YouTube, right? But you had a show. Just kind of tell us about yourself, anything you want to throw out there.
I did used to have a YouTube show, but they took away the webcam feature directly on the website. So I've had some trouble trying to get another webcam show started. And I've also had some trouble trying to get a podcast started and everything. But I have been writing a blog about the Tar Heels throughout this football season. I've talked a little bit about the basketball team, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as the season starts to begin. And, I've tried to get out to more events this year with me taking a year off from school. So I've been to 2 football games already. And me and my buddy Josh Marlowe are planning to go to the state game as well. And basketball-wise, we went to late night with Roy. We're going to go to the Tennessee game as well, and possibly the state game for basketball as well. So, yeah, I've been trying to get out to a ton of events for these guys and really support this athletic department that is, they've been a help to me through some tough times in my life so far. So Carolina Athletics has been there when some other people have not. So.
For sure. And we're glad you have joined us. I'll make sure that the links to your blog, your Twitter name, all that gets up in the description so that anybody listening, watching this can go down in the description, find that link, connect with you. And like I said, glad to have you on. It's always good to connect with diehard Tar Heel fans. And yeah, we're one way or another, we all come to love this university. And it's kind of my goal in this podcast is just to unite as many of us as we can. So you mentioned you were at late night with Roy. So that's kind of where I want to start. First, how was the event? What was the experience? I have not. It's on my bucket list to get to one yet. But just what's the experience like for anybody that's not been there?
It's a little bit different maybe than we expected. This year, as you know, they kind of changed it up a little bit as to how they have done it in the past. So it was more of like a skills event. It was kind of like an all-star weekend type feel to it. But it was definitely interesting. You got to see both the women's team scrimmage and the men's team scrimmage. And then, of course, they had the 3-point shooting contest, the skills contest. And, of course, some of the fun things like the dancing and everything like that. Jesse Holly, I thought, was a great host. I really liked him.
Was this your first time going? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, no, okay. It is. Yeah, it was the first time going. We actually got there really early. We got there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we weren't even the first people in line. But, that was really the part of the event that there were problems, I think, was that there were a lot of people that would skip people in line. I know when we were trying to get in, we had bags on our back because we were carrying stuff with us. And, we put it down on the table, and there was an old lady that was walking behind us, and a couple of kids actually pushed her out of the way to get in. It's a little bit crazy, but yeah, once we got inside, it was just great. We got to sit in the student section. They don't tell you where you can sit, or like there's not special areas that you have to sit at. It's a free event, of course. I was a little bit disappointed in the turnout. Most of the upper section was pretty vacant, but I've heard a lot of Tar Heel fans tell me that this is not a huge event, but it's definitely something that, for the people that like to see the team and, maybe get a look at what some of these guys are going to be like, it's definitely an event you want to go to. It's similar to like the spring game for football. They're not going to show you too much, but they're going to show you just a little bit of what they're going to bring to the team this year.
And I think it's lost some of its luster. It used to be late night, was – well, at every school, Midnight Madness, you had to wait, and they couldn't scrimmage until it hit midnight. And, now it's been moved up, and people start on different nights and all that. So I think it's lost some of the luster there. Plus, there's so many videos that go out of, summer scrimmages, and, there's so many YouTube videos that you can watch the guys play. It's not necessarily the first look at, the freshmen and the new team. So it's some of that. But yeah, it's still on my bucket list to get out there. If you don't have anything else on the experience, let's move into kind of the scrimmage, the guys scrimmage, where we'll focus on who stuck out to you. I did a predictions podcast, kind of what I predict will happen and stuff. But after actually seeing them in person now, what's your prediction?
I think this team is still going to be really, really good. There's definitely some problems inside. There's concern because really there's no depth down there. You got Kennedy Meeks, who played well in the scrimmage. I thought Isaiah Hicks looked really good. His shot looked really good. Tony Bradley is the best out of the freshmen, I think, right now. He's got the body size. He worked really well against Hicks and Meeks inside. He looked like he knew what he was doing, as opposed to the other two freshmen that looked a little bit hesitant, a little bit scared. The ball control wasn't great from them, but besides really Bradley, Meeks, and Hicks inside, there's really not anybody that I think can make an impact on the inside. Shea Rush didn't really see a whole lot of time, but he didn't look all that effective when he was in the game. And then, at the guard spot, Justin Jackson looked really good. Joel Berry, of course, looked really good. But the guy that really surprised me, and I think it works out really well with what we discovered this week, which I know that we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes, Nate Britt looked really great. He stepped up and played a huge role. And he almost he was almost the reason why his team won. He was on the white team, him and Justin Jackson both. And him and Justin Jackson were just taking it to those guys on the perimeter. They were knocking down everything from the outside. So it was good to see.
All right. So you mentioned a surprise player. Flat out, who is the best player on the court?
I would say the best player on the court that night was probably Justin Jackson. That's who I thought from watching from the stands.
All right. Well, that's good to hear, because he needs to, step up. We kind of see the potential and what he can be there. If the consistency can be there now, it's just going to raise the level of this team. Everybody's been talking about Joel Berry. We know kind of the lacks we have inside. You mentioned only three guys really: Tony Bradley and Meeks and Hicks. So if Hicks gets in foul trouble, anything happens there, we're in trouble.
That's the concern. Yeah, you're right.
Being in the stands, what does the chemistry look like? I streamed and I watched. I saw a lot of the same things. Kennedy was knocking down shots. Hicks, I think, had probably the best stats coming out of the game, even though they're unofficial stats and stuff. But something that you can't see over that is just kind of what's the and probably even with the dancing and stuff. Maybe you can get a feel for it, but the chemistry of the team, the cohesiveness. We know we lost a couple of big leaders in Bryce and Marcus.
You see the leadership from Barry. That's who I think is really stepped up, and he's the main guy. I think Isaiah, he's kind of that quiet leader. He's not extremely vocal, but you could see the way that he holds himself on the court. People look up to him, especially guys like Tony Bradley. Meeks, definitely. Theo Pinson. Theo's kind of that jokester that kind of lightens it up. But I think, the freshmen really looked like they fit in with these guys. We saw Tony Bradley and Joel Berry work together. They were a team for the skills competition and the shooting competition. And, they worked really well together. They looked like, they had been, together with each other for a while. They were passing perfect. So definitely, I think this team, I don't think it has the bond that last year's team did. I think that was a very special group. I think that team may have had even a stronger bond than the 2009 team. But this team, I think, really is – I think they bought in that they can be something special still, that this is not, over because Bryce left and Marcus left. They could still make the Final Four. That's my prediction. I think they'll be there at the end of the year. So I think these guys are bought in.
That's good to hear. Because I think it is. I think it's an underrated thing in college. Well, any sport, but college basketball is how well guys get along, and you never know that behind the scenes of who's hanging out or any of that stuff. So definitely Good to hear. This is kind of going back. I'm a little scatterbrained here, but you mentioned kind of the skills competition again. How do you think a dunk competition would go over at Late Night with Roy?
I was expecting that. There were rumors that could have been part of the rotation. Ross Martin, I think, put in one of his tweets that there was a chance that could be included, and we were freaking out, me and my best friend, and we had another guy with us, and we were talking about who would win it. And I mean, we were hoping to get Seventh Woods out there to throw down some jams, because we've seen him before do that. I think Isaiah Hicks would really do well in that contest. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other guys that could probably go out there and throw down some jams and really surprise us. I mean, Meeks could probably throw down a jam, but it probably wouldn't be anything extremely special.
I suppose that's probably the issue, is just the number of guys, right? Obviously, Seventh could be in there, and get Theo, some of those wings in there, but maybe just not a whole for competition. What about in warm-ups? Did Seventh do any crazy, or anybody for that matter?
Well, they didn't really. I mean, they warmed up, but it was kind of just lay-ins and everything. Like, you could tell they were definitely trying to avoid injuries or anything. They weren't going hard or anything like that. Nobody was throwing elbows. There were a couple of fouls that were called, but most of the time it was just kind of lackadaisical. Like on defense, I'm not going to say lackadaisical, but it wasn't 100% effort. They weren't out there trying to make sure no one scored. I mean, there were a couple of good moments, like Luke May had a nice block. But yeah, I mean,
they've been warned by Roy, probably.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Roy was, Roy sat behind like the scorers table. He kind of let, I think Steve Robinson was coaching the blue team, I believe. And then I think Hubert was coaching the white team, or CB. Yeah. I think it was CB. Yeah, I think CB was coaching. I think it was Steve and CB. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, and obviously injuries is the last thing we'd want to see either. So I guess if that's a trade-off we have to take, we'll take it. But one last thing kind of on the game, something I know, and you mentioned kind of there is, the defense was kind of lazy, or at least, not full effort. And that looked like the start. I know Sean May was on, it was streamed on ESPN3, and Sean May was on the call with ACC Network. And it was like the first 4 buckets were just like open jumpers. It was like 4 right away. He's like, man, I hope we don't play defense like this all season or something. But it seemed like it kind of took a transition later in as it got, down to the end of the game or under the scrimmage. It looked like we did have that intensity. And I think Joel Berry even mentioned kind of the competitiveness in the guys. They wanted to win, and they were going to play defense in order to win. Could you see that in person?
Yeah, it was honestly, like, what it reminded me of was kind of like a pickup game with your friends. Like, the first couple of minutes of it, like, for us, we're all out of shape. So, we're just trying not to, pass out. So, we'll play a little bit of defense, but not too hard. But then as it gets towards the end of the game, as you get towards, in our case, like 21, when we play to, we're starting to go a little bit harder. We want those bragging rights. And you could feel that, the game started a little bit slow defensively. But as it went on, you could see, they were protecting the basket a little bit more. Some guys were being more aggressive on the offensive end, trying to drive inside and get to the basket. And I thought, overall, I was very happy with what I saw. I think this team is in the spot where we should all expect them to be. I mean, if anyone expects us to be as good as, Kentucky or Duke right now, we're not going to be there just yet. But as the season goes along, I think the experience will definitely help us. And when we get to the tournament, I mean, that's the thing that I told one of my friends. I was like, look, these Duke freshmen, they're not going to have that tournament experience. Our guys will have that tournament experience, so they'll know what it's like if there is a close game in the tournament, how you can stay calm and still make plays to win the game. So
right. And significant tournament experience. I mean, going to the championship game,
exactly.
As opposed to even Duke. Grayson Allen's been there. And I guess, he was on the championship team as well. So he's got some of that experience, but, some of those other guys from last year, they've been in the tournament, but haven't. The Final Four is a whole different story. So
yeah, exactly.
So that's good to hear. And especially, Duke just had their tip off I don't know, night or two ago, and everything out of there is how amazing they're looking. So, yeah, if we're on par with that, there's nothing really we can complain about as Tar Heel Nation.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, so we have to get to it. It's inevitable. We've mentioned it here. The big news this past week, is Theo Pinson breaking the 5th metatarsal or something like that in his foot, breaking his foot again, or fracturing his foot. Had the same injury. I believe it was the other foot, though, last time.
Yes, it was the other foot. That's right.
And out indefinitely. Does this, I mean, you've talked about your predictions here. I asked you straight up, but does this tamper your expectations or your predictions at all? You faltering anywhere? What do you think?
I mean, so part of me says that, I don't know if we'll be as ready early in the year. But I still think this team is talented enough to win 30 games and get into the tournament as probably a 4-seed or higher. I think where it would hurt would be the Maui tournament, because that's going to be a tournament that's going to show how well we can handle, back-to-back games, how good our depth's going to be. But, I don't think it's a dire blow. I think it actually kind of is similar to the Marcus injury from last year. I mean, hopefully he's not out until, middle of conference season. I mean, we have no timetable. That's what really hurts with indefinitely. That's, it's an assumption. You got to just guess. But, I still think this team has the talent. There's a lot of guys that are going to step up, I think. I think Nate Britt's going to step into that role, and I think he's going to play well. From what I've seen, I mean, he won the 3-point shooting contest. And, I mean, he looked really good in the scrimmage. We saw him late in the tournament last year look really good as well. So I think, especially as a senior, I think he's going to step into that role, and he's going to play well.
And the good thing is he's been in that role. He's had, with Marcus being out, him and Joel started together at the beginning of last year. I think even his freshman year he got some starts. So he's he's been in that. My issue, and I predicted, I think I said an Elite 8 season for us this year. I think we have the talent to get to the Final Four, and obviously matchups matter, and as we know now, injuries and stuff. But my issue is the Final Four. I don't see Nate Britt as a starter on a Final Four team. Like, if he has to start all year, I think it's really tough for us to mark the Final Four. And I think he's very serviceable. I think he's, he looks like a great kid. He's got the skills to, maintain or, to be a good team. I just don't see how he starts all season and we make a Final Four. So again, that indefinitely, we don't know. Hopefully Theo comes back. He looks, he's still in shape and looks as good as he did coming into this season. But that's kind of my issue. And as far as prediction goes, not that it matters as far as record go. I don't remember what I said last week or a couple of weeks ago in my predictions as far as a final record. But I think there is definitely the potential for more losses. Especially like you said, the Maui tournament early in the season. If we don't have the depth or we just don't have the explosiveness, maybe that Theo would bring.
Yeah, I think like the biggest area where it hurts is defensively. I mean, Theo, in my opinion, is our best perimeter defender for sure. I mean, he's he's that guy on the outside that can really take it away with his length. And I mean, of course, it's going to hurt, but yeah, I mean, we're going to have to adjust. But I think you said that you don't think Nate Britt would be a Final Four starter. By that time, we may not need him. Right now, really what you look at is, let's say that for some reason Theo is out for the year. You're really thinking of Nate Britt as a guy that's going to come in for now, hold it down, and allow Brandon Robinson or Seventh Woods to mature into what many people believe they could be. And by that time, one of them, I think, could end up starting if we had to. I mean, I don't think Theo's out for the year. I'm really hoping not.
Me too.
But I think these freshmen will develop as well. And I think it's going to be kind of like last year. We might have a confusing Northern Iowa type loss where we're just scratching our heads and
we always do.
What's going on? Yeah, we always that's just our way. But when we get late in the conference season with that 7-game stretch at the end, and then go into the conference tournament, I think that we'll really have a good feeling about this team. We're going to be sitting here telling ourselves we got a shot to make a run at this title this year.
And again, that's all we can ask for is
Mhm.
you have the talent, you have the experience to make a run like that. You never know what's going to happen. All right, so you said Nate Britt starting. I threw it up on Twitter as a poll. They
Mhm.
came and I listed seventh Brandon Robinson, and we haven't even mentioned Kenny Williams. As far as defensively, he could be the best defender out of all those guys.
Mhm.
And so I threw it up there. Nate Britt did win, I think, just barely with like 33%, and someone else had 29%. And you mentioned Ross Martin, a friend of the podcast here. I think he had the same poll up, and Nate Britt won that. So it's kind of consensus.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks that Nate should start, however they voted. As far as the way Roy usually goes, the senior is probably going to get the start. So
Yep,
another reason
exactly.
to Nate get that. So you kind of mentioned, though, by the end of the season, someone else could be starting if Theo wasn't back.
Mhm.
Who would be your preference? Again, as long as those freshmen come along, know the offense, what's gives us the best chance in your mind? If
Mhm.
Theo is out, again, we're both hoping obviously Theo comes back and we don't have to worry about this question.
It is really tough because both of them are really talented young men. But right now, from what I saw in the scrimmage and from what I've heard from Roy, I think Brandon has the edge. Part of that is because Seventh did have knee surgery in the offseason and he's still recovering from that. So of course I'll give him that. But I think Brandon he showed me some things. He was in the 3-point shooting contest and his shooting stroke looks pretty good. I mean, knocked it a good amount of shots down. If I remember correctly, I think he made the final and he was right there with Nate Britt. I mean, in the scrimmage, he looked okay. I mean, there were some times where he would kind of just stand there. I wanted to see him move around a little bit more and try to get open. But from what I saw, I think right now he's a little bit ahead of Seventh. But what I've also heard is that Seventh is looked at as more of a point guard rather than a shooting guard. So I think Brandon Robinson would be that guy. But I think Kenny Williams, like you said, we hadn't mentioned him, but he's definitely going to be used because Roy has talked so much about how great his defense has improved. Shooting wise, he's still struggling a little bit, but hopefully he can pick up a little bit in that area. But as long as he can come in and really just be that defensive guy that we're missing with Theo,
Right.
that would really help us a lot. So.
Yep. And Brandon gives us the length. To think of
Mhm.
Justin Jackson at 6'8", and I think Brandon's like 6'6" or something. If that's our 2-3, that's a long,
Yeah, that's a big group right there.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So if he can come along, the thing that surprised me about Brandon, he came in with the reputation of being able to knock down shots and stuff, but it looked like he could get to the basket and slash through in that scrimmage. So
Yeah, that was surprising how well he was able to. I mean, he was aggressive, and that was something that I did like. As opposed to I think Seventh was a little bit more conservative. So I mean, we're not going to judge him too much. It's a scrimmage.
Right.
It's a pickup basketball game, pretty much.
Right.
But still,
Right. Hey, we will though. That's what makes us diehard fans, and
yeah,
what drives us crazy week to week. So
yeah.
All right. So like you said, it is a scrimmage, and we've probably killed the horse a couple times here talking about late night with Roy. Looking ahead, usually teams have a secret scrimmage between their tip off and exhibition. I have not heard anything. The only rumor I've heard, it may be Memphis that we play, but I have no idea when. And I don't know if you've heard anything out there.
I have not heard anything on that. I've been
okay. So we won't comment too much on that. We got the the exhibition coming up. The first action we'll really see from the Tar Heels. But yeah, again, we'll have more podcasts since then. Anthony, I want to thank you for coming on. Again, follow him on Twitter at Future Tar Heel on Twitter. And I don't know if you did this at the beginning, but throw out your blog website, and I'll make sure it gets down in the description as well.
It's on sportsblog.com. I don't even actually remember what the actual name of it is. It's called the Heel Tough Blog. I think you can just search it on there and you can find it. I've got a couple of I got mostly football articles right now. I got the Late Night with Roy article, and I'm going to do the team preview later this week. So I'll break down every single guy that's on the roster and everything, tell you what I think they're going to be doing this year. And yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is great.
Awesome. Absolutely. I'll make sure that's in there so everybody can find it. And I want to throw it out there. If there's other diehard Tar Heel fans that want to come on the podcast, shoot me an email or hit me up on Twitter. I love getting, again, uniting Tar Heel Nation. That's kind of my goal here. This is a podcast for the fans and by a fan. I'm no professional here either, just kind of throwing this stuff out there and talking Tar Heels. So that's the best I got. One other thing I want to throw out there before I go, the YouTube channel, this podcast goes up on iTunes. It goes on Stitcher, lots of different podcast apps, but it's also on YouTube. Not that I have a video face or anything, but we are really close to getting 100 subscribers. I'd love for that to tip over the edge there and get 100. So if you're not subscribed already, youtube.com/UNCHoopsTalk. Go subscribe, give it a like, all that good stuff. Once again, Anthony, thanks for coming on. Until next time. Go Heels.